So talking about Power BI, we're going to actually talk about user adoption, and any of these principles you could actually use for really anything, but we're going to be focusing particularly on Power BI and specifically on creating and supporting Power BI champions. So first, just a little bit about me. I'm Belinda Allen. I live in the United States. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. That's on the southeast coast. So I live right on or well, close to the ocean, not right on it. I lived in New York City longer than anywhere in my life, so I consider New York City to be my home. And I've been a Microsoft partner for over 30 years, so I've been around a long time. And I've been a Microsoft MVP for 10 years, 5 years as an ERP MVP and 5 years as a Power BI MVP. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I did take a hiatus off, but I've been one for 12 years. And I co-authored a couple books on GP, which is one of Microsoft's ERP systems, and Power BI. And basically, I love learning and I love hobbies. So that's just a little bit about me. And I want to talk about just quickly let you know why this is a big topic to me. This is so important to me. I've named this my topic of the year for 2022. And so Power BI user adoption, it is critical, and Microsoft's putting more and more into this topic as well. You'll notice some of the things that are coming down the pike soon. So I'm going to go ahead, and I might put some things in the some notes or URL links in the chat as we go along. So let's talk about who this session is for. So in the whole report designing process of Power BI, there's people who develop the report or connect to the data, do the data ingest, people who analyze the data, and those people together as a combination do all the data modeling. And then there's admin people who share the reports out. Well, it is not for these people. Well, I guess it is for these people, because these people are going to affect how the end user. So this is really about the end user, the report consumer. We need to make reports easier for them. Now, this is really a how-to session and not an idea session, and not so much a how-to. And I can't stress how critical for Power BI it is to get user buy-in, because there's nothing to force users to use it in a lot of circumstances. They can often get the information they think they need from other sources, maybe from Excel reports or from their other system. There's nothing to force them into using a new way, and it could actually destroy your whole Power BI strategy if you're not careful. So let's look at our agenda for this time that we have together. I want to talk about why user adoption is important, and I want to talk about why some users resist. This is where we'll spend the bulk of our time, and then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So if you have a Q, go ahead and put it in. I can see some of the Q&As, I believe, or you could just interrupt me and ask them to me, Shakir, okay, if you see one. So I'll be happy to take them. And on some of the screenshots, I do have pictures of Power BI. I put everything in SharePoint. If you want to see a demo of one of those or how it works, just let me know. Okay, so let's talk about basically Power BI adoption. I want to talk about why some users resist. And these next couple slides actually come from the Power Adoption Guide that Microsoft has out there. It's a slide deck you can get, and I'll get you the link in just a moment. But they talk about resistance management, and it's natural for people to resist using it. So this is one of the slides. They're really pointing this information out, and this is a slide that they talk about some of the techniques that people have that they recommend for dealing with resistance. And some of these things are just as simple as, let me get my pen going here, empathy. If you can, there we go. If you can really listen to what people have. One of the things that I ask people about most frequently when I get into their offices, if I could do anything to make your job easier, what would it be besides answer the phone? And the reason why I ask that is because I want them to know that I'm listening to what they have to say, and I'm telling them to think beyond the report. And often you get information that can make Power BI and the Power BI methodology significantly better. And then, of course, you need to make sure that you have someone within the company that's a motivator. And these are the champions that I talk about. So there's a couple other slides about communication that I wanted to point out. It's important that at the beginning of your Power BI methodology or any methodology that you talk about the resistors. Now, there are going to be innovators, people who are automatically the ones that jump up and say, hey, I want to use it. I'm excited. I love new technology, and that is my nature. But there are going to be people who resist, and that hasn't always been my nature. I should point that out. Many moons ago, before Windows, back in the DOS days, I was using Excel 123. So when Windows came out and Excel came out, my business partner, who is my husband, said we should use Excel. And I was like, nope, I'm happy with 123. I don't want to move. Well, one time I had to parse a column, and it was significantly more complicated than Excel than it is, or in Lotus 123 than it is in Excel. And so I was having some difficulty remembering the steps. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to try Excel. I saw the text to columns. That was it. I became an Excel champion from that point forward. And actually it kind of changed me because I quit resisting a lot of software at first too. I always like to check out what's out there. What is the better mousetrap? So make sure you include those resistors like me initially in the conversation so that you can continually talk about how you're handling the resistors and who those are. So it's part of your open communication. Now, this slide that they have over here on the left where they talk about these common resistance themes, these are going to be the topics of how we deal with some of these resistors because it's really a good theme. And a friend of mine, when we were talking about user adoption, if you have a champion in the company, that's someone who is going to do everything they can to help nurture the product. They're excited about it. They're gonna see value in Power BI or whatever you're implementing, and they're going to want to share it with other people. They're going to want to learn more about it, and they're going to naturally just encourage other users to embrace it, even if it's not their job. And when you get a champion, like he pointed out the wave at a sporting event, they can help drive user adoption for everybody. Now, not everybody's going to stand up when the wave comes through, and you're not going to be able to convince everybody, but at least you're going to get the bulk of the people. And so without a champion, this is what your wave's going to look like. It's going to look like that single person who's standing there, and nobody wants that, right? So you want to make sure that you have widespread user adoption. Now, there's something in marketing called the 311 rule, which means something good happens, you tell 3 people, something bad happens, you tell 11. And so if that is the case, for every person who dissents or is a resistor, you need to then make 4 champions. So those 4 champions could tell 3 people, and that'll be 12 new converts as opposed to what the resistor's telling in 11. So that way you'll have a win. So you really need to get out there and work with those individuals. Now, common resistance themes. These are, I excluded like a dev one, and then there was another one that felt very duplicated to me. So these are the themes that Microsoft says that cause common resistance for people in user adoption. It's that people just don't have time, or they think they don't have time. People don't want to build, or don't know what to build, rather. People aren't passionate. They don't see value in what you're showing them or what you're implementing. People worried that there's not going to be sufficient training. And they're also worried about having to deal with the new ways of working. They're uncomfortable having to learn something new. Sometimes that might manifest in their mind as it makes them feel stupid to learn something new, or what if they fail at learning and then they're going to look stupid. So we need to be able to deal with some of those issues. And then finally, people just don't like change, period. They just don't like it. So how can we deal with these? And we're going to take them one at a time. But before I do that, this is one of my favorite authors, Simon Sinek, and he's written 2 books, Leaders Eat Last and Start with the Why. Start with the Why is a really great book. And what he says is value is something people feel and not something that they get. So you can't just throw this at them and say, hey, you're going to get value out of this. you got to be able to show them, right? You got to make them feel like there's going to be value out of it. And over the years, in my 30 something years in the software industry, I've been told over and over again that people buy benefits, they don't buy features. And that's true. People will buy and adopt benefits, what's going to make their individual job easier, and not features. So let's start addressing these one at a time. So first up, we have that people don't have time. Now, I told you I was going to tell you some stories of my implementation past. So I've walked into a couple customers in the past and I said, hey, story number one, if I could do anything to make your job easier, what would it be? And in his accounting system, he said, well, we have batches, that empty batches, and we want to delete the batches. And I thought about that for a while. Now, he knew I was there to talk about reports, but when I open the door to anything, what is your problem? What's giving you grief? Where are you losing valuable time for you? And so I thought, okay, so you have these empty batches. So I said, why do you have empty batches? And he went on to explain that his requisition system would bring data into these multiple batches. A batch in an accounting system is just like a group of transactions that you're waiting to post and approve before you commit them into the accounting system. And because it was difficult for him to approve all of these individual batches, he had someone move them all manually to a single batch, and then he had these empty batches. And I thought, oh, wait, you've got multiple problems, and the least of which is empty batches. So your first problem is it's difficult for you to approve batches. So I took Power BI and I took this report and started building it. So what you see here, this is a list of batches right here. Let's see, there we go. So this is a list of batches. And so he could either select a single batch or select a single vendor or select a single department in their company. And then he could see all of the transactions that were keyed into that batch. Now, one of the things that, and I don't have the screen fully populated for you to see, but I also put a Power App on here. So when he selected a single batch, if he was happy with the way it was coded, it would automatically select that equipment batch right here. And he could just click the button that says approve, and it would automatically approve it. Now that significantly improved the way he did his business, the time it took him to approve processes. This report right here was a lot easier than the report he had manually. So he had an older system. So to be able to get this information, they had to print up paper reports and look at them on paper. So this significantly reduced the time it took to review the report. And by being able to look at it in this mode, he could even cross batches and look at several batches at one time. If he looked at these, if he decided he wanted to look at the next one and approve it, he could just click it and then click on the approve button again, and it would approve it in the system. So this was a far sufficient way for him to utilize his system and utilize his time. And he ended up saving loads of time like that, was something that he never thought. This alone, saving someone an hour a week or a couple hours a week, and in this case, multiple hours for multiple employees, it is something that gives them value. It is something that they feel. They feel, you know, oh, I have a little more time to take a lunch break. I don't have to stay overtime at work to do this. So that's value that they feel, and not value that that we're just flat out telling them. Another story is a customer that said, I have a hard time managing credit limits. So we did a detail, and this is a drill down page. You could tell by the fact that I have, let me get my pin back on. You could tell by the fact that I have my arrow in the top right, top left corner. So when they drill down on a particular customer, in this case, it's customer Astor Suites, I can actually even looking at a particular document number that, in this case, that was on hold, I could see the details of the particular invoice. I could see the AR summary. I see the balances. This is actually even numbers that go outside of their accounting system. So I'm taking and using a measure to say, okay, this is what this 7,000 is what's actually posted. So this is, but I have like payments unposted and I have invoices unposted. So what is the real balance due? What is the credit limit and what's my available balance? So I could see there's plenty of available balance. I could go ahead and just click on remove the hold. Just click on the button and it would automatically do that. Again, this is a Power app right there. And so this is another way that we could save time. So you put everything that they need to manage right here on the screen, and by simply adding a Power app onto it, that would save time. Now, Power apps aren't the answer for everything, but Power apps certainly provide a lot of great value inside of a Power BI report, as does Power Automate. Then this brings us to the people don't know what to build. And this is a really big problem. And one of the things is that many end users think that they're the ones that are going to be building reports, or they want the ability to build reports, or somebody else is going to be building reports. Now, a story I have in the past on this, that people don't know what they want to build. I had one customer that this was, oh gosh, I don't even remember when this was. This was well before Power BI. So this was probably about 10, maybe 12 years ago. They actually bought a server and installed SharePoint. This was before SharePoint Online, and gave it to me to put in my office. This was when I was in New York. And I started working on building dashboards for them. They didn't know what they wanted to see. So I kept coming up with my own KPIs and my own metrics. And then I would pick up the machine, get in a taxi cab, ride to their office and show it to them. And they're like, no, 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 this isn't what we want, but we don't know what we want. So this actually went on for a couple of years. What they were trying to do was give a dashboard to the board that made sense. And most people don't know what they want to see, but usually when you give them an idea or you show them something, they know, oh, I know how I want to change that. So this is where we could take advantage of the Power BI feature called personalizations. And so this is personalization. So let me get my pen. So when you have a visual, like you see right here, this is our visual right here. Okay, when you highlight it, now I'm in the Power BI service on this screenshot. When you highlight it, you are used to seeing these buttons, but when you turn on visualizations, you get this additional button here that is for personalizing, and it allows you to change the visual to anything that you want to see, including changing the way the visual, which visual you're using altogether. You might want to change it from a line and cluster column chart to a pure flat out line chart, or maybe a matrix. And then you could change all of the different fields and values in that visual as well. So you could change what's on the axis, what's in the value, and so forth. Now, if you do this, then if you've not done this before, by the way, I should point out, then in the report, in Power BI Desktop for the report, before you publish it, go to File and then File and Options, go to Current Report, go to Report Setting, and then turn on the personalizations. And I do want to point out, if you want to be able to control what they see or what fields are available on particular reports, then you could use the Tabular Editor 2 or higher to be able to create perspectives that will allow you to focus on it a little more. But the personalization, you could just let them kind of design on their own. Now, they're not overwriting the original report. They're just making changes to what they want to see. In the Power BI service, they can then bookmark it the way they want to see it. And then you could give them some control. They could also always go back to the way you've done it in the past. But one of the things that I absolutely love about this particular visual right here is that they have full control on what it is that and how they're looking at what they want to see. So I absolutely love that. Then this brings us to the fact that people they're not passionate or warming up to the idea of value. So this is another reason. So meaning they're just not feeling why you want to implement Power BI. It's just not something resonating with the end users. Now, usually at this point, if you're implementing a Power BI strategy, the executive level or somebody higher up is typically has already bought in. They have a plan. You're working with them on implementing. You're just at that user adoption, that last in phase. And because of that, that's where you're ending up having to deal with these users. And so again, I take you back to, you got to work with them on value. You got to find ways for them to feel the benefit. You got to find what makes them excited and how it makes it easier for them. And often it's because they're afraid. And I mentioned that earlier. They're afraid of learning. They're afraid of something new, especially in the case where you're talking about data analysis. If you go from, hey, you've been building reports in Excel, and now we've got data analysis we're going to start analyzing data, and we're going to be really successful in our company. It's going to be cool. They might be afraid that they're not going to be able to rise to that level of data analysis. So enter a lot of the visuals for artificial intelligence. And here are two of them on the screen. We have two really easy ways to do data analysis. So the first one is what you see on the left, and this is the key influencers. So the key influencers is one that I absolutely love, and forgive my bad handwriting, because you could actually, it's often called the root cause analysis, but one of the things I like about it, if you're analyzing sales, for example, a growth, you could actually kind of get a persona of what that perfect customer looks like as far as which ones are increasing your sales. And in both of these visuals, and I'll talk about the one on the right in just a second, both of these visuals, you define what you want to analyze, and then you could just put fields in and say, maybe you could explain it by this, maybe you could explain it by this. In the case of what's on the right, we're explaining it by maybe forecast bias, demand type, product type, and the plant that it's coming from. These are possible explanations where we're telling it to analyze the percent on back order, and that's what you see where I circled. So we're saying, okay, I want to analyze this percent, what percent's on back order, and I don't know what to put it in, so I'm going to go ahead and just put in things at the top. And one of the things that you're going to notice about the plant one, and I'm going to draw an arrow right there, is there is a light bulb there. And the light bulb indicates that that's where artificial intelligence is. So the user in this one said, okay, show me the breakdown by first by forecast blues, second by demand type, and then third by product type. And then I don't know how to break it down after that. So why don't you tell me, of all the things I threw in the explanation, which one has the most weight on making a high back order? And in this case, it happened to be plant. So this is a really easy way, especially this is the decomp tree and our decomposition tree. And the decomp tree is the easiest way for someone to start analyzing data. And it's just far too simple to see where you want to focus and spend your time. And you could see that the line goes between them, but you could click anywhere in here and then work your way back down as well. So it's a powerful, powerful visual for someone who really doesn't know what they want to build. Another thing I like to do when people don't know what they want to build is take advantage of using Q&A. And the Q&A visual that's out there is beautiful. And one of the things I like to do is I like to add a blank report page, and I will just add 4 visuals of Q&A. And you'll notice that on the Q&A that it does ask us, or does have these suggested questions. Whoops. Right here. Okay, so those are our suggested questions, and it even tells us, hey, you could even show all suggested questions. Now, this is a cool way for someone, again, who doesn't know, because they could just click. They could click here. They could click here. They could click here. And then they end up with this interactive report that they kind of built themselves. Or they could come in here and just ask the question, maybe show back order percent, right? Okay, so now they have this custom visual that is unique, or custom page that is kind of like their dashboard, not to overuse the term, but kind of like their own personal dashboard that they could use over and over again. So this is a really valuable tool. And if you're not encouraging the use of it, I really recommend it, because with the Q&A tooling, which is what we see here, and let me go back for a second. On this screen, I'm going to, let me zoom in. Whoop, zoomed in the wrong screen. Hang on. Come over here and zoom in. There you go. Okay. Yep. And again, I clicked on the wrong screen. Okay, I'm not going to zoom in. Oh. Trying to stop my slide deck. Shouldn't have gone into Zoom. Okay, let's go back in and pick up where I left off. Give me just a second. There we go. Okay, we are back. Okay, so let me go back to that last slide, because I do want to show you this. Okay, and on this screen right here, we have a gear. And that gear will open up the tooling window. And in the tooling window, you could do things like set up your own questions. So you're not using the questions out of the box. Although, and here is the suggested questions where you could add your own questions in. Now, once you add your first question in, the out-of-the-box questions are going to be gone, so keep that in mind. But you could put in your own FAQ for people so that they're just selecting what it is that they want to see, and they're picking from a list. From a user perspective, you could point out this isn't much different than you selecting what report you want to see from a list. It's just a different mechanism or a different piece of software that you go into to be able to pull the list up. But you could do more than that. So a couple other things you could do. In the Teach Q&A and the Find Synonyms, you could actually put in your own synonyms. So if you don't call customers, maybe you call them clients, or maybe you call them patients, then you could put that in there instead of customers. So if somebody types in customers, they mean patients. If somebody types in clients, they mean customers. So you can put in all of those synonyms. Now, Microsoft will put a lot in for you. They'll try to figure out what will work. And if they put one in that's incorrect, then you can fix it in the tooling piece as well. That's pretty valuable. And then one of my favorite things is this review questions. Now, what I love about the review questions is you could go in and see what people are asking on this report in Q&A, and actually all of your reports on Q&A in one place, so that you might, if you see people are asking about something a lot, you might want to add it to the suggested question so that it's something easy for people to populate. And so think about that. This is something that is just something I find particularly valuable. Now, people are also worried that there might not be sufficient training for new ways to work. And one of the things I want to point out, and I'm going to copy this link, so let me get it in, and hopefully it'll appear in your Q&A. If you could put that link in the Q&A. So one of the things about user adoption, especially this is something around the area of training, is you want to make sure that part of your implementation methodology has to do with mentoring. And so this is from the adoption roadmap inside of Microsoft Docs. I totally recommend that you spend time here. The wonderful Melissa Coates has added some really good documentation in here, as well as some other people like Matthew Roche and some other amazing Microsoft people. So take advantage of looking in here, but make sure that mentoring is part of it. One of the things that I've seen in Power BI is because there's so much content available out there. A lot of people want to play with it on their own before they take an official class. And then maybe they dive into doing some things. And then at that point, they need help. And so they don't always want to go back to a square one class. So what they want is coaching. So Power BI coaching or mentoring is a very real thing. So it's something I strongly encourage. And then as we talk about making training on here, you could put a lot of training into your reports, depending on how you do them and how you work on them. So this is a report. And one of the visuals that I've used here is the smart narrative one. And I recommend, this is the smart narrative one, and I recommend that you put it out there, even if it's just on a page by itself, or maybe you have a button that goes to a hidden page that says, hey, take me to smart narratives and let's go from there. Now, this smart narrative here kind of gives me like the newspaper story of what I'm seeing here. This is another way that makes people feel better about learning to read the reports. It might scare some people to see the text like this, right? Or rather this visual. This might scare people. They're like, I don't quite understand what you're showing me. And I'm like, well, the color schemes on here are terrible, but the bars in the back are my actual year-to-date sales, and then the line chart is my net sales for the day. So I can see when my sales go up and down and what the heck is going on. Well, I see that and I'm like, okay, but I don't know how to interpret that. And so this is something, this smart narrative is something that helps make sense. And very similar to Q&A, you could put in additional smart narratives that help this make sense as well. Maybe even some text that say, hey, if the trend is going down, then you might want to try looking at this. So take advantage of the smart narratives to help guide some of your users on how to use the report. So give them some baby steps, even if it's a hidden page that is just basically more on using this report. Now, this is a YouTube link. And once again, I'm going to put this link in here. This is, it's kind of old, but it's still relevant. This particular link, the person who designed it, and I just took a screenshot of YouTube so I'd remember it was YouTube. He did a couple of wonderful things. So he's got in here these buttons, right? This is an information button. And when he clicks on it, it pulls up a tooltip page. So not just a tooltip, but a tooltip page. And it gives the user steps on how to use it. Now, in the early days, you might want to build a report that works like this. This is kind of like a Power BI report with training wheels. So this is something I find incredibly valuable. And one of the things you could do, even though he has these turned on, you might even want to have like a help icon in the top. That was really bad, so let's do it a little better. And if they click on the help icon, then it pops up all of these show me more. And then you could click on them and go back. And then that way, and this could be the question mark, or show me more could be a bookmark. You can see they're using bookmarks up here. And so it could be a bookmark that says, okay, show me this report, but show it to me with all of these options to learn more about what's going on in for each visual. So you can make the report regular, and you can make it with training wheels for whomever is interested, and explain what it is you're showing. So that's something that could also provide some real value. Now, keep in mind, if you do use these, I would not necessarily recommend making these available for personalization, but this is a great way to help explain to end users what it is that they're looking at. Now, this is, I pulled this up, and you could see when I pulled this up, I was on my phone. My husband and I were driving down the road. COVID is going down. COVID cases are going down everywhere. Thank goodness. And hopefully that it stays in that direction. And obviously it was March 8th that I was pulling this report up. And on March 8th, he said, oh, look and see what the COVID cases are doing. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do that. So I went in and pulled up on my phone this report, and I did a bad job circling, but on March 8th, the data was updated through March 6th, and I could see the new cases. And I started looking at this report, and I thought, huh, is that new cases for March 6th? Is that new cases for the month of March, month to date, as of March 6th? Or is that year to date? And I thought, I don't know. What is new cases as of that, right? I mean, I totally get the total. It's cumulative. I can tell by looking at the number. But what about this new? What is that? And I don't know. And this is actually done by one of our competitors who will remain nameless, not Power BI, but a competitor. So the design of this report is just really, really bad. The information on it. Things like this are going to make resistors resist more. Another book that I totally recommend getting, and let me see if I can put this link in, or maybe you could even just take a snapshot of this link, but I'm going to put the link in from Amazon. This is a book called Don't Make Me Think, and it's really about web design. And so it's been around a while. It's in the 3rd edition, but they talk about these different usability attributes. And this is something that we need to think about, and we need to be very, very thoughtful on our designs for reports, because we do not want to put someone in the situation where they're saying 91 new cases as of when? I mean, is that today? Is that was that on the 6th? Was it the 1st through the 6th? So we need to be able to think about those things and make it easier. So again, this is a really good book, but just the ideas behind it is important. So report design is incredibly important. Just don't take an Excel report or visuals and throw them out there. Make them make a little bit more sense. Now, I'm going to show you, let me skip this page for a moment. I'll come over here because this is another example of a smart narrative. So I'm going to turn on my pen here. One of the things you see here is the date. And I'm going to now play this. This is actually a little video I made. That's actually a smart narrative. You notice the lines underneath it. I use the smart narrative / Q&A type feature to provide a date experience. So let's go ahead and let's see. I can click on play. There we go. So now you're seeing, as I change the date will change dynamically with the date up here at the top will change dynamically with whatever I've put in the slicer. This is a great example of being able to see what I'm looking at. If they had put this in, I would have understood new cases. If it just said March 6th to March 6th, I would have said, oh, okay, that's just March 6th. If it said March 1st to March 6th, I would have said, okay, that's month to date. So make sure you put something similar into this. Okay, I'm going to go back to the other slide for a moment, because part of training, again, is making the experience easier for the end user. And a couple of things that, sorry, I got sidetracked looking on this session. I'm going to have my slide deck pulled up or shared with them, so yeah, don't worry about that. I'll be sharing that out. And it does have, I'll do it with the notes so that all the links will be attached to it as well. Part of making it easier for the end user is making the experience of where they're working easier. So one of the things I encourage people to do, well, first of all, let me step back. When you're getting Power BI Desktop, I always recommend getting it from the Microsoft Store, if possible, if they haven't shut out the store. There are 2 reasons for that. One, all new versions will automatically be updated. So every time there's a new version, which happens once a month, everybody has it updated. And not only that, if there's a fix, the fix gets updated. So if something they updated broke, they put in a fix right away, the fix will be installed automatically. And then the second reason is it does not require admin rights to get it from the Microsoft Store, right from your computer. If you download it by using the download method and then install it, you do need admin rights for your local machine, and you want to make sure that everybody's on the same version, and you want to keep your versions current. So it's a chore to go around and get this done on all the machines. But for end users, if they want to work on their desktop without going through the browser, from the Microsoft Store is also plain old Power BI. This is actually a mobile application, right? So this is Power BI Mobile for your computer. This is a great way for them to work because they'll have the same experience that they would have using a Power BI app. So things are limited. It's easier to see. There's not as many questions. There's no concern as to, oh gosh, what is what workspace do I want to go into? What report do I want to go into? Do I want to go into favorites or do I want to go into apps? So it'll reduce their choices on what they want to get to, but not the reports they have access to. So it's a more powerful way to work. And that's one of the great things about Power BI is that we can give the reports, make them available to users where they work. So if they're out in the field, they could work on their tablet or their iPhone or Android or their phone device or smartphone. If they're working at their desk, they could work on their computer. If they're working at home, they could work on their notebook at home. Whatever the case, it could work where they work. If they work in teams, this is one of my new favorite places to put Power BI reports because you could put the relevant reports in the relevant teams. And again, it reduces the choices of where to go in and get information. So that will cut learning curve dramatically if you're not having to train as much on how to use the Power BI service. If they're consuming reports, even if they're using personalizations, much easier to do it here than anywhere else. Okay. That said, let me go past that again. And then people don't like change. So this is the last bullet point area that I wanted to get through. That's it. They just really do not like change. So we have to fight that. Now, one of the people who we tend to have to fight the most is, and we all know who this person is when we go into someone's office, is the person that has built all of these Excel reports, right? And so that's a person we have to deal with. But it's also other people too. I remember walking into one of my customers and we were implementing a requisition system and he was fighting us and he was a manager because he said, I don't know what I order and I don't know who I order it from. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm buying and I don't know who I'm ordering it from. I'm like, okay, you have to have some idea because you're not randomly dialing a phone number and just saying, send me stuff, right? So you have to have an idea. So write down what you know. And so it took a while to convert him, but we did convert him, but he was a resistor that we had to take kicking and screaming. But let's go back to that Excel person. Now that's someone who has invested a lot of their time building all these reports. They're proud of their reports. So they're the innovator, they're the champion for Excel reports. So how do we work on converting them? Well, a couple of things that we can do. One of them, it's a good practice, a best practice to, once you model your data, to publish a data set. And then when you build your reports, open up a new report in Power BI Desktop and build the report off of a data set that you've built. That way, if you have changes to make to the data set, all reports that are using that single data set will work and you have a single source of truth. And that's the big thing. You have a single source of truth. You have something that you've modeled to make it easier for end users and something that you verified is correct and will operate much more efficiently than just pulling data directly from a database. Now, once someone's in Power BI, and there is a little bit newer screenshot I need to get on here, but one of the things they can do right from Power BI is connect to the Power BI data set, so long as they have Office 365 with their Power BI, because both of them are using Azure Active Directory. Your security and your credentials are already set. So all you have to do is connect to the appropriate data set that you want to connect to, or you'll only see what you have rights to. So go ahead and connect to that data set. And then at that point, when you're in there, then you're going to have a pivot table that you can work on creating your pivot tables. So for those people, as a temporary measure to get them into using and adopting Power BI, let them maybe say, hey, Bill, if you want, build a couple of the reports. Since you're so good at Excel, why don't you take the data set and build out a couple reports, and maybe you can help me test the data. Maybe you could verify it. Maybe you can compare it to what you're using. And comparing it is letting them do some of the comparisons, quite the big deal. And one of the things that I should point out, and this is kind of a funny story. I tell this story a lot. This goes back to 1995. I was implementing a system that way obviously before Power BI. I was actually building report and crystal reports, which is a very cool tool. I love it. I love Power BI more, but honestly, I haven't touched crystal in more than a decade. But I was building a report in Crystal, and the company we were implementing said, when you can match this report we were using in the old system exactly, then I will go live. And I'm like, okay. And I couldn't make it match no matter what I did. I kept trying. It was like always something weird off all the time. And I'm embarrassed to say I did this for about 2 months, trying to figure out what was wrong with my reports. And then finally, it dawned on me, oh, I took a calculator, they had them back then, or an adding machine, to the old report and found out the report they had been running their business off of for years was wrong. There was an error in that report, not my report. And so my report was correct. And so at that point, they went ahead and converted over. So that kind of gave them value right there, right? Some of the people that were a little unsure, they weren't really champions yet, but they weren't resistors. They were kind of like we're in the middle trying to figure out which side to pick. When that happened and they realized it, they immediately turned to, well, I want the correct information, so I'm going to the new one. I certainly don't want to think I have something in inventory only to find out it doesn't and then have to tell the customer I don't have it. So that kind of moved them on that. Now, interestingly enough, at that same customer, this is a side note, but another idea for value is I told that customer, I'm like, he said, build this report for me and show me these just for these 5 customers. And I said, okay, why for these 5 customers? He said, they're my top customers. And I thought, I'm cocky, I'm young at that point. And I said, I knew that there was a top N feature. So I said, I'm going to see. So I did a top N and I did it on the top 10. And he had 5 of the top 6 right. What he didn't know is that one lone company had worked its way up into the number 5 spot. Now, not only was that valuable to him to know that, oh, okay, they've moved up, right? So they've got some real value. So did number 5 fall off or stop buying as much, or did the new number 5 just start buying more? And they found, oh, they've just started buying more. But what they also learned was that was a company that they sold mistakes to. So they realized, wait a minute, we're making a lot of mistakes. So we're wasting a lot of money in our cost of goods sold in our production department. So they went back to the factory and got that fixed. But that saved them money on the mistakes. But then they also realized, hey, if we make something a product that costs less, maybe doesn't use all of our expensive pieces, then there's a market for this company to sell a lesser price item. So they not only saved money by fixing the problem, but they also found a whole new revenue stream by targeting that smaller end. So that was a kind of interesting experience. We're closing in on the end. So a couple of things that I want to talk about here at the very end is I only have 3 more slides, including this one, is naming. And I cannot stress this enough. So first of all, I want you to notice the name of my fields here. I have spaces. I always say embrace the space. Put a space in between. Users will put a space in between. So put a space in between, especially for Q&A. We don't want it to be class name, all one word, department name, all one word. We want to break it up so it's department name or just department, and so it makes sense to the end user. Make sure all of these are names that make sense to the end users. Here I have an abbreviation, LY sales. I know that's last year's sales. Is that terminology that people in our organization use? Is that our company's tribal language? Is it the typical term that is used in our company, make sure that's what gets included in here. There is nothing worse when somebody leaves it as the way it came across in the system, like maybe ratings. Well, cost of goods sold might end up being COGSACT_001. That doesn't make sense to the end user. Put in the words cost of goods sold, or put in COGS if that's what they understand. Make these field names something that's easy for them. Artificial or the Q&A will work significantly better if you take the time to name your fields right. Take the time to put in the synonyms as well. It'll be worth your while. Now, in this one, this is an older one of mine, something I've started doing of late. Everyone has a date table for the most part. I have started renaming my date table to a calendar table, and I probably misspelled calendar. If I did, here, I'll put an E in there too, so now it looks like I knew how to spell it. Okay, so I have a friend that bought me a t-shirt that says I'm an accountant, and accountant spelled wrong 3 times, and at the bottom it says I'm good at math. But the calendar here, I call it the calendar because there is a date query and a date field, and I think some people will find that to be confusing. And so that's why I like to now name my calendar as we go along. But make the tables something that make sense. The next thing I want to point out, and this is the last visual slide. So first of all, also, whoop, went too fast there. Let's go back. And let me pull my pen back up. Okay, so one of the things that I do is I take the time to hide a lot of fields. So I'm looking at the fields that I have relationships with. I want them, for example, when instead of choosing sales date, I want them to come up and get the date from the date calendar. So I hide the field for the sales date. It's confusing to the user which one that they're going to choose. And since this is modeled as a star schema, I want them to go to my date table, which is my dimension table or my lookup table. And so that's why I take the time to hide date fields. Do not let multiple date fields show up on the same or at least across multiple queries, especially in the same. It will confuse users, and if the users get confused, it could upset them. And then I also want to point out, I like to put my numbers in the number area. I'm sorry I didn't have time for Q&A. It looks like I have 2 minutes left, but I want to point out, so there's innovators, the people who are going to step up and be excited and going to want to work with you right from the start. And then there's everybody else. And of those everybody else, there are the resistors that we've been talking about, or the dissenters. But there are a lot of people in the middle. And these tactics are not going to work on everyone. But hopefully, if you could convert more people to champions than non-champions, if you know that in dissenters, if you can move as many people to the champion side, then what's going to end up happening is some peer pressure is going to kick in. And when they're doing that wave, like we saw in the beginning, they're going to be reluctantly at first doing the wave, and then eventually, hopefully, they'll move over. At that point, the project, you know, it's up to the managers on how to do things, but keep those lines of communication open. Make sure that you include user adoption and handling of dissenters as part of your methodology of implementing your Power BI strategy, and make it part of your conversation or your communication with your team so that they know who these dissenters are and they know what is doing. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of Tech Days Pakistan. Thank you so much to everyone who has set this up. The sessions I've seen so far today, and I'm looking kind of tired because it's in the middle of the night. Well, now it's 7 in the morning, but I'm very exhausted, but I totally appreciate it, and thank you so much.